Hi there, it's Deneen from Grow From Your Overflow and DeneenTB.com. And we are here today for our Dare to Lead Bible Book Club, our Dare to Lead book by Brené Brown. And we are taking a look at it from the viewpoint of what God's Word says. So I'm coming a little bit early today to say hi to everyone and to see if you are here. As you come in, please tell me that you're here. Hopefully I have my chat on so I can see it. Let me open it up just a little bit more. There we are. So I have the chat going so I can see it. I'm so glad that my technology is working today. Last time, as you know, my battery did not want to talk to my camera, and I had a little bit of trouble getting started. So that's why I'm here a little bit early today. We're going to get started at 12:08, and we are going to go till 12:58. Hi, Mary. I'm so glad that you're here. We're going to go to 12:58. Sometimes we go a little bit over, so I want to warn you now that your lunch might be a little longer. So I hope you've got your lunch together, get something great to drink. I forgot to bring something up to drink today. It's been a little bit of a hectic time here. I have been away on vacation. I know it's summer and a lot of people go on vacation and might not be here today. So if you're watching on the replay some other time of the year, you can put in the comments where you went on vacation at the end of July. I was in Colombia, South America for about 10 days. And it is amazing to, one, be able to travel around the world, and two, to be able to travel to see family around the world so it doesn't cost as much. Isn't that always great? I'm a firm believer in using and abusing. No, I'm a firm believer in going to where family and friends are so that you can have an enjoyable vacation and really get the flavor of what the country is like through the people who live there. One of the best things that I did, and I'm just talking, so if you come in, please say hello. We'll get started in a minute. I'm just telling you a little bit about my adventure. One of the things that I did, how's the coffee? In Colombia, the coffee is amazing. It's not as strong as what the Americans are used to. With Starbucks has gotten us into really strong coffee. It is a more mellow coffee. And so that's what I wanted to tell you. One of the things that I did while I was in Colombia was I scoped out 2 locations for my first getaway retreat. Now, I'm planning a retreat in March of 2020 here in Michigan. And it's going to be a little bit upstate in Michigan to a gorgeous spa area. There's nothing to do there except be at the spa and do the retreat with me. So if you have ever considered wanting to come to a faith-based business retreat, then I think you should try my one that's coming in March. Would love for you to come up to Michigan. At the end of March, we should be cold, but not too much snow by that point. And the second thing is that I was scoping out 2 places in Colombia for a getaway retreat. And one of the things, Mary, that we're going to do is we're going to have a coffee sommelier. So they'll be able to taste test the different types of coffees that are there. Because guess where I live, or where I'm going to live, is right there in the middle of coffee country in Colombia. So I was really excited because both places are absolutely gorgeous, and there's absolutely beautiful countryside and back to nature type of things while being pampered. So that's great. I see we have 2 people on today. So if I haven't said hello to you, like I've said hello to Mary, please put in the comments a hello so that we know that you're here. And if it's just your first time being here, please, oh please, put in where you're coming from, where you are making way into from here. Like I said, my nose, every time I get online, my nose starts to itch. So excuse me for itching my nose. Somebody must be talking about me. I just put over on Facebook that I was going live in 5 minutes. So hopefully people will get on. So what are some of the things that, if you've been with us in the Dare to Lead Bible book study, what are some of the things that you have had big ahas about so far? I think for me, the biggest thing that we've talked about so far are really those things that build the walls that keep us armored, and how we can knock those down, how we can pull those apart, and really come at people and understand people, and work with people. I shouldn't say come at. We work with people in a way that is truly vulnerable, that is truly a way for you to open up, be the type of leader that others want to follow, because you're being true to who you are. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about values. What have been some of your ahas? Is it good for me to get quiet for a minute, right? I don't know if that's good or not. We got a couple of minutes here before we get started. And if you are, so you know what, Mary, we're going to get started a little bit early today, just because I know Deb should be here. I know some other people, Julie maybe, some other people that are from our Facebook group. And that's one of the things that's so awesome about this live time with you here on YouTube, is that if you're catching us live today, and this is, I want to say, it's July of 2019. We're going to be having our Facebook group open through the end of August, because we have one more session after this. This is our 4th session. We're going to have our 5th session on August 13th. Every other Tuesday we've been doing it. And so but we're going to leave our Facebook group open. So if you want to be a part of the Facebook group, that'll be in the show notes afterwards of where you can connect with us and be able to get into that group, because we're having more conversation over there. We're having more questions, especially last time for session number 3. There was a lot that I didn't get to, and so it was really great. Okay, Mary, my favorite quote from the book is people are just people. Yeah, they're only people. We tend to put people above ourselves a lot of times. And so that is what we need to remember, is everybody's just a person, just like we are. No one's any better or any bigger. They just have different talents and abilities. So I love that. So it's 12:08, so we're going to get started. If you do come in and I'm talking, please introduce yourself so we can stop and say hi and recognize that you're here. So it has been such a great time in our Bible book study, our Dare to Lead. And I know that those who've been with us the whole time have been enjoying reading it. And we've had some, like I said, great conversations over on the Facebook group. Let me know you're here. Check in with us. Tell us where you're coming in from. I'm so glad that you're here. If this is your first time, I was just telling you, if you haven't joined the Facebook group yet, make sure when I put the show notes up that you click on that. And really, it helps us. We're almost finished. This is our 4th session of 5 sessions. So signing up means that you'll get an email reminder to remind you to come to the live, and that you'll also be able to get into that secret Facebook group. It's secret, so you can't find us, but we want to talk about really great, deep things there. So that's why we made it secret. Like I said, we'll have that open even a couple of weeks after we finish the study, so that we can still have time to talk. Because what my one goal for this summer for you is to actually get the book completed, to finish the book. Because, the people who are most successful are always learning and always discussing great ideas. And that was the whole point of doing this summer. So who am I? If you don't know who I am and you haven't seen you haven't seen my YouTube show before called The Truth in Business Show, I am DeneenTB, your faith-based business strategist and clarity coach. I'm excited, really. Readers are leaders. Exactly, Mary. Readers are leaders. And I'm excited to just delve into this. And somebody's asking me if they can be on the phone. I don't think so. Hold Hold on. Mary, would you text Linda for me and tell her that she can listen on her phone if she has YouTube on her phone? Thanks. I appreciate it. This is our fourth session. We are way more than halfway through the book. In fact, I have it open today to where we're starting. And as you can see, we're past the halfway mark of the book. We're in this last section. I'm so excited to be this far into the book. And what we started with, so today we're going to be looking at pages 185 through 238. So in the first part of the book, we talked about rumbling with vulnerability, and we've covered the myths around what being vulnerable means, and that was in our first session. And then we contrasted, like I said, the armor leadership with the daring leadership. And really, that was very helpful to me. And in the third session, we started digging into what shame really is and how we all feel it. That's where we got the people are people are people that Mary was talking about, and what the solution is, and that the solution is empathy. And then we talked about staying curious and being grounded, or having grounded confidence. So if you want to go back to those first three sessions, those are the types of things that we looked at in the first part of the book. So during this session today, session number 4, we're going to be looking into our values, which is where I love to be, and braving trust. So let's get started on, and if you have any comments during this time, or I skipped something that was really significant to you that you highlighted, please make sure, hi June, please make sure to put it in the comments, and as the comments come up, we can stop and go back to that section if it really spoke to you, and I kind of gloss over it. So I want you to feel free to put those in the comments, and feel free to answer any questions, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm starting here on page 185 with the quote that says, daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things. And when it gets hard, we seem to go into survival mode. So daring leaders do the hard things, because when it gets hard, we tend to go into our survival mode. The critics get louder, and it's easy for us to just start hustling. Brené says that she's even guilty of it, that she's always trying to prove or perfect or perform or please others when she feels this way. So have you found that true for you? Do you hustle harder when things get harder? Do you go and hunker down into that survival mode, try to prove that you're right in the arena, or do you allow others to scare you off? So what is your tendency? Do you tend to shut down, or do you tend to work harder? When others get inside of our heads, when we allow those voices to get louder than our own, and God's, that's when we're in real trouble, right? God's given us authority, even if man doesn't recognize it. We are following his call to do, we work harder. June. We're following he called, even if man doesn't recognize it, we know that we're doing what God has called us to do. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3 says this, and as for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by any human authority. This is Paul talking, and this is a good example for us. It goes on to say, I don't even trust my own judgment at this point. So we start to work harder, but really we need to be not caring what other people say and asking God for what we need to do, right? This is truth. We need to continue to read God's word, learn what he says, and use it to combat our own thoughts. Brené's cure is that we stand up for and live into our values. She says, because we have these values, we often go into uncomfortableness, and we rumble so we can do something that we believe in. Because we have these values, we'll be brave and we'll be daring because it's aligned with who we are and what's important to us. Values give us reasons, and they give us tools to enter those tough conversations and those tough situations with others. When we're feeling the pressure of a tough situation, it's actually our values that help to guide us. And I've used that filter before, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. It's essential that we have clarity about what we believe and why we believe it. Not only do we need to know our values, we need to be able to articulate them, tell them to other people, and we need to practice them. All our decisions need to go through the filter of our values. And I'm putting up a 5 here, but we'll talk about what Brené says in a minute. When we have this tool of the values, knowing them and using them as a filter, then anything that's asked of us, it's easy to decide very quickly if we could say yes or if we should say no. So let me ask you this. Are you all doing things that are aligned with your values? Do you know your top values? Do you know what's important to you? The first thing I ask of my coaching participants is to do a values assessment. I know Mary's done the values assessment with me because she's been one of my clients. I have a huge stack of cards that I use, and I like to do it this way instead of a list because it makes it into a very tactile exercise. And I think that is much better. For me, if I look at a list of words, I become very overwhelmed. But if it's on a little card and there's just one word to think about, that's much easier, at least for my brain. So even if this list on page 188 of the book, if it's overwhelming to you, I suggest that you get some blank sticky notes or something and just, or blank pieces of paper and put one word on each page and make a stack for yourself. Very quickly, you go through the stack and you have a yes pile and a no pile. It doesn't matter. Don't think about it. It's yes, this is important to me. No, this is not important to me. Once you have that, get rid of your no pile, take your yes pile, and then divide them again. This time putting them into, this is super important to me. This is important to me. You keep doing this until you've narrowed it down, taking away that one pile, until you've narrowed it down into just 5. This is how I do it. But Brené tells us to narrow it down into 2. So I suggest that if you want to narrow it down into 2, that you just look at the 5 that you have and decide if they're similar words. And if they're similar words, maybe pick or choose the best word. On page 187, let me go to 187. On page 187, I hope you read that values are values. And what I mean is that you don't have a different set of values for your professional life than you do for your personal life or for the other parts of your lives. And we have to stop compartmentalizing our lives into all of these broken pieces. It's not about balance, ladies. It's not about balance. It's about integration. Integration, right? I don't see myself, so I can't tell if I'm doing this right, but integration. Your values will help you do that by helping you prioritize what's truly important to you. The list on page 188 is really good of all of these words. If your word isn't there, you can write it in. Brené's reasoning around only having 2 values is that she found that by having less values, they become very strong, and you were willing to tough out the situations more if you are hanging on these 2 values. And actually, that kind of makes sense. On page 189, she says, my 2 core values are where all of the second tier circled values are tested. So even if you have in that list lots of different things, choosing the 2 top ones will kind of hang off the rest of them and how you can really test them. So for me, this means that even though I have faith, learning, creativity, authenticity, and independence, I think of my 2 being just faith and creativity. And I can really see how the other 3, learning, authenticity, and independence, really do help me and have me hang on to these other ones. Does that make sense for any of you? Have you thought about that before? I like the 5 just because I can say, oh, this is my filter, right? But having 2, we know that these others are hanging off of these 2. Does that make sense for you? Does anyone know their values? If you do know your values, put your value, at least one, in the comments and see if we have any similarities. Really, our values define who we are. And when life, work, business has tough moments, we choose to do the right thing. We choose to have integrity. Look at the definition at the bottom of page 189. It says integrity is choosing courage over comfort. It's choosing what's right over what is fun, fast, or easy. And it's practicing your values, not just professing them. And for us, we have the protection of God when we walk this way. Proverbs 2:7 says, He grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. And in Proverbs 10, verse 9, he says, people with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths will be exposed. I love this. I love your values, Mary, peace and comfort. And everything you do revolves around that, no matter what it is. So even if you have picked 3 more values, you know that those are your top 2. And that's what you need to walk in. Wholeheartedness and making a difference. Yes, love that, June. God's got our back in this, right? Especially when it feels the most uncomfortable. She has 3 questions to ask yourself about your 2 values. So now you've written your 2 values, ladies. So ask yourself, does this define me? That's your first one. If it doesn't define you, it's not a value. Okay? Does it define me? Is it who I am at my best? And is this a filter I can use to make hard decisions? And we're going to go into more of how to use that as a filter to make those hard decisions. I would encourage you to take time to work through this exercise. Brené says that most people don't take the time to contemplate. That's on 186. They don't take that time to contemplate their lives and figure out these types of things. That's why for me, it's been super important to take time away each quarter, and those of you on here know, each quarter to really have a day away, a day with God, a day of quiet retreat. I love that 6-hour period where I can just sit and I can meet with my CEO. And some days I actually wish I could have a longer time. Because there I get realigned with God, and I really can think through these types of exercises of, am I living into my values? Whether it is the values of an organization or it's your personal values, there's one important step. Creating behaviors, creating actual actions that reflect those values. Brené suggests that we create 3 or 4 behaviors that support each of the value. And she also says to think through 3 or 4 slippery behaviors or things that you slip into that go against that we're tempted to do when the going gets tough. For her example, she gives her example of her own courage. For her, courage and faith are her 2 top values. And so she says, courage is to stand up and speak out for my beliefs. And she uses the example of if someone were to say something that was racist or sexist, that she would actually say something to them. So that's her courage example of a behavior that she would do. For the faith one, she says she likes to find the face of God in everyone. No blaming, no shaming, just holding them accountable. So she's actually giving that to as an action or a behavior. On page 193, you'll see the exercise where she asks you to put in the 2 values. And I would encourage you to do it. And I'm actually going to share some of what I came up with in these 2 places. So my first value is faith. And the behaviors that support this value for me are to trust God, have time with God, see women through God's eyes, and allow for God to transform me by changing my thinking, right? Some of my slippery behaviors that I can do is I can judge people, rely on myself, and pride. So if that starts to sneak up on me, I know that I'm not working in my value and that I need to stop. Creativity. For me, some of the behaviors I wanted for creativity were that I would continue new learning all the time, that I would be writing, and that I would be problem solving through brainstorming. Those are my behaviors to show my creativity. Some of the things that are my slippery behaviors is when I rely on my routine and just fall back on that. When I doubt myself that I'm not creative, or I stay silent about creative things that I know I'm supposed to be doing. So those are the things. Really, anything that we have to do that gives us discomfort or anxiety is just momentary anyway. So we can show up in our values this way. We can choose that courage over comfort or uncomfortableness because it only lasts for 8 seconds. She's done a study and she said that it lasted 8 seconds, the uncomfortableness. So we can do anything for 8 seconds, right, ladies? We have to pick up the phone to talk to a client. 8 seconds of uncomfortableness until we hear their voice and are glad we're there with them, right? So think about that. The first 2 steps are to know your values or know our values and then to exercise those values. The third part is what she calls the trifecta, and it's empathy and self-compassion. And we've talked about empathy and we talked about having compassion on yourself. So this is just adding to it when we have our values. We chatted about it before, and last time it was all we talked about was how to combat that judging thing with empathy. But here's what happens. What do? We allow shame to live with us, and we listen to the enemy's lies that we're not good enough, or who do you think you are, right? That was from the very first time, right? You're not good enough, or who do you think you are? We let that come in. We believe in a scarcity mentality instead of an abundant mentality, and we have a comparison problem. I know I probably used this before, but Galatians 6:4-5 says, pay attention to your own work, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. For us to be daring leaders, we need to see the abundance in our lives and then prioritize things that are important to us through our values. We must not keep silent about the hard things as we're living out our values. A brave leader does not shrink back from the uncomfortable conversations and situations. They're the ones who say, I see you, I hear you, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to keep listening and I'm going to keep asking questions. In short, we give ourselves permission to stay curious. So we have to push out all those negative thoughts and behaviors and focus on 2 that will help us most: empathy and self-compassion. Brené says that we need to find 1 or 2 who can share empathy with us because they know us so well, they know our values. We need to find some really good friends, ladies. And we need to show ourselves compassion because we're the only ones who can show ourselves compassion. No one else will do it the way we need. Did you answer the 6 questions on page, oh, now I got my pages stuck here. Hold on a second. On pages 195 and 196. 195 and 196. There are 6 questions, and I found them very truth-telling to myself. Now, when you do these things, get real honest here and make sure you are feeling supported by those closest to you and giving yourself what you need also. Here's her example list. Her example list for support means she needs love, encouragement, straight talk, boundary setting, and someone who will say the occasional no to her. In self-compassion, she lists things like sleep, healthy food, exercise, and connection. I know for me, I put some things that for support were things like acceptance. And for me, really, self-compassion is just help stop the negative talk. I love what God says in Psalm 139, 7 through 10. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. If I ride with the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, even there, your hand will guide me and your strength will support me. Isn't it awesome that we just don't have people, but we have God lifting us up? That is amazing. How often do we forget this? And how do we know when we're living outside of our values? How do you know when you're living outside of your values? For Brené, she says that it's when resentment starts to creep in. I know for me, it's when judging comes. I judge everybody, whether I think that I'm better than they are or they are better than me. But really, for me, I know I'm not in my values when I have a feeling of dread of having to do this. I hear myself say, why am I doing this? Or why do I do this? And if you find yourself saying things like that, maybe it's something that's not really aligned with your values. What are your cues to know that something's not aligned with your values? Or have you thought about that before? Maybe you haven't. Brené goes on to talk about how she shows up in her value of faith. She says her favorite definition of spirituality is this. Go to page 197 if you're following along in your book, and I want you to help read along with me what this man, Pittman McGee, says. And she considers him her spiritual mentor. So spirituality is the deep human longing to experience the transcendent in our ordinary life. It's the expectation to experience the extraordinary in the ordinary, the miraculous in the mundane, and the sacred camouflaged in the profane. Okay, I want to let you know that this is a Gnostic view of God, and that Gnosticism is a false doctrine based on the belief that the body is bad and that the spirit is good. There's even a duality in God himself, with a perfect higher God and an inferior lower God. Gnostics, they deny that Jesus came to earth in a human form of God, that he died and rose again. Paul, John, and Jude all warn against these teachings. So if you read 1 John 4, 1 John chapter 2, Jude chapter 1, and 1 Timothy chapter 6, as well as Colossians chapter 2, you're going to find this. Now, I'm not going to take a deep dive here, but if you want to talk more about this, let's do it over on the Facebook group. Just know that there is more myth and experiential Christianity that may look really good, but it is heresy. I say all this, and I'm being very serious about this because I know I'm calling it out. I say all this because when someone says that they're a person of faith, it can mean different things to different people. As believers in Jesus Christ, we need to be on our guard for these false doctrines. I'm going to read 1 John 4, 1b through verse 3 that says, "Do not believe everyone who claims to speak by the Spirit. You must test them to see if the Spirit they have comes from God. For there are many false teachers in the world, This is how we know if they have the Spirit of God. If a person claiming to be a prophet acknowledges that Jesus came in a real body, that person has the Spirit of God. But if someone claims to be a prophet and does not acknowledge the truth about Jesus, that person is not from God. So we always need to ask the question, is this from God? So let's turn our attention to the next section. Again, if you want to talk about this Gnosticism, false doctrines, I've been doing a lot of study about it. We can do it over on the Facebook group. If I see comments here about it, I will maybe address them. But let's keep it respectful. That's all I have to say. So let's turn our attention to the next section, which is living into our values and getting feedback. We have to be ready to receive feedback from someone. And there are 10 questions you can ask yourself if you are in a position where you're ready to, receive feedback. Are you ready to be on that end? Because feedback sometimes gives us a lot of uncomfortableness. And we have to filter it, again, through our values to see if it's actually worth it, right? Some things are worth it, some things are not. So the 10 questions, and they start on page 198, and I'm just going to read through the actual questions, but there's lots of things under these questions that you can read. Number 1, you are ready to get feedback when you can sit next to the person and not across from them. I know I'm ready to get feedback, not give it, get it when I'm willing to put the problem in front of us rather than between us. I'm ready to get feedback when I can listen, ask questions, and accept that I might not fully understand the issue. I'm ready for feedback when I can acknowledge what I do well instead of just picking apart your mistakes. I'm ready to get feedback when I can recognize your strengths and how you can use them to address your challenges. I'm ready to get feedback when I can hold you accountable without shaming or blaming. I'm ready to get feedback when I'm open to owning up to my part. I'm ready to get feedback when I can genuinely thank someone for their efforts rather than just criticizing them for their failings. I'm ready to get feedback when I can talk about how resolving these challenges will lead to growth and opportunity. I'm ready to get feedback when I can model the vulnerability and openness that I expect to see from you. Wow, those 10 are just totally telling of how we really need to come to our work in vulnerability and be really prepared to be uncomfortable, stay in our values, and work through these issues. Which one did you see for yourself? What I see is that if we do it this way, we're being more proactive than reactive. And so which ones did you find yourself saying, oh, I need to work on that? When giving feedback, it's important to ask God for his perspective and not fall out of our values or out of our integrity. The second part is to allow others to have their feelings, but not take responsibility for their feelings. I think as women, it's important because we need to live through that uncomfortableness of the situation. Remember, it only lasts 8 seconds. And what about the other direction? What about that giving feedback and receiving feedback? First, we have to stay aligned with our values. Brené's example on page 203 with her value of courage is that she gives herself permission by saying, am I brave enough to listen? Things that she says to herself is, always be looking for something valuable, take what works, leave the rest. And this is the path to mastery, really, that these people, that they care about me and they love me. And that's what she says to herself. These people are doing this because they care about me and they love me. I love the fact that she's constantly talking to herself. So what kind of things do you say to someone that's giving you advice or feedback or telling you something that's hard to hear about yourself? God has given us a way to prepare for this too. It's in 1 Peter 1, 13 through 16. It says, so prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. Put all your hope in the gracious salvation that will come when Jesus Christ is revealed to the world. So you must live as God's obedient children. Don't slip back into your old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. You didn't know any better then, but now you must be holy in everything you do, just as God who chose you is holy. For the scripture says, you must be holy because I am holy. Think about the last time you were in this type of situation, getting feedback or being told something you didn't want to hear. What emotions did that start to feel in your body? How did that manifest outwardly? What were the thoughts going through your head? These are super great tools for us to be able to do the things that God says in Scripture, right? Oh, I love that. I say thank you for your insight. I know, really. I think we've practiced enough in our mastermind with our networking group, June, that we've understood that these are things that might be hard to hear, but they're so good for us. The self-control in those verses from above is what we're talking about here. Brené says we need to develop behaviors and self-talk phrases that reposition, right? How we show up when that happens. It's a great strategy to think through and to practice doing. On 205, in the middle of the page, there's a paragraph that says, when you can walk out of a difficult feedback session and say, I have stayed connected, I stayed courageous, I stayed authentic, and I stayed curious, then that in itself is daring, and that in itself is a win. This is it for me. This is how I imagine Jesus was and how he showed up. And these are tools that will help us show up the same way. You can read the case study about feedback done very well on pages 205 to 207. We're going to skip over and we're going to go right to page 209. I love this because it says, know my values, KN, know my values equals to know me. As opposed to no values, NO, equals know me. It reminded me of something that I think there's been a bumper sticker about. Know Jesus equals know peace. KN, to know Jesus, we know peace. NO, know Jesus, equals NO, know peace. So this section talks about how the values are an operationalizer. I don't even know how to say that word. Operationalizator. I don't know, it's on page 209. So once we have our own values and understand them and under control, then we can decide what our company looks like, right? If it's your own company, then the business values are going to reflect your own values. Turning those values into skills-based behaviors is that can be taught, observed, and evaluated is what comes next. So Brené uses her own company as an example, and I think that it's awesome. So she has 3, and they kind of come off of her faith and courage, right? Be brave, and that's tied to her courage-building work. Serve the work, and that's about stewardship, and I think that goes under her faith, right? And take good care, how we care for ourselves and for each other. So what we look through these 3, and these are really great for any kind of company, any way to work. Behaviors in brave include to talk to people and not about them. Matthew 5:23 and 24 says, if you are presenting your sacrifice at the altar at the temple and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice at the altar and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. So God's already told us to not talk about people, to talk to people, right? Serve the work. For her, behaviors include being responsible for the energy you bring to a situation and to work and stay positive. Romans 14:17 to 19 says, for the kingdom of God is not a matter of what we eat or drink, but of living a life of goodness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. If you serve Christ with this attitude, you will please God, and others will approve of you too. So then, let us aim for harmony in the church and try to build each other up. Serve the work, ladies. The third part, to take good care for her, includes behaviors of practicing gratitude with your team and your colleagues. 1 Corinthians 1:4-6 says, I always thank my God for you and for the gracious gifts he has given you. Now that you belong to Christ Jesus, through him, God has enriched your church in every way with all of your eloquent words and all of your knowledge. This confirms that what I told you about Christ is true. Take good care. Give kudos when it's appropriate. I've been thinking about how I'm going to do this as my team grows. I love that there are actual behaviors and languaging that everyone in the organization can understand, use, and practice. Now I've got to come up with my three, right? It gives everyone the work that works with you a real culture and a power for decision making. When these structures are set up and everyone knows what they need to do and the way that it needs to be done, it opens up people really to bring their best selves to the work. So you and I need to bring our best selves to our businesses, and we need others to do the same, right? Actually, we're told this in Colossians 3:23. It says, work willingly at whatever you do as though you are working for the Lord rather than for people. Sadly, only about 50% of people believe that we're given a study, and statistics say that only 50% of people believe they are doing their best work. I hope if they were to interview only Christian people that were in the workforce, that would be a lot higher. Brené begins here to talk about some of the assumptions of positive intent. That daring leaders need to work from the position that people are trying to do their best. So she called it the value of living big, B-I-G, boundaries, integrity, and generosity. So the question we have to ask ourselves in order to become this type of leader is on page 214. I know I'm skipping really fast and furiously ahead. Is the question on 214, what boundaries need to be in place for me to be in my integrity and generous with my assumptions about the intentions, words, and actions of others? Do you see it there at the top of, almost at the top of 214? That really encompasses it. She goes on to say that life is better when you work from the assumption that everyone is doing their best. Romans 12:6-8 actually is a list of gifts that are to serve others. We are to use these gifts, these strengths, these talents well, to the best of our ability. In verses 9-12, it gives us specific behaviors to practice so that it will help us. This is Romans 12, verses 9-12 say, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them, hate what is wrong, hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with a genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. I love how God's word is just reinforced by all the things that Brené's research has brought to light. Don't you love that? So Brené ends this section talking about when someone in your organization doesn't really fit in and you have to let them go, aka fire them. It got me to thinking about my own company and if I'm truly living out my values in the way that I'm doing business. I challenge you, not just encourage you, I challenge you to look at your values and how they are fitting into your company, whether it's your own business or you work with or for someone else. And if there's a disconnect there of some type for their values, the company's values, and yours, it's time for you to make a decision. The next part is the Braving Trust section. And it starts with a definition of choosing to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. And conversely, the other part of that is distrust. What is important to me is not safe with this person in this situation. If there's no trust, there's no connection. So you've got to make that choice, right? When you're braving trust, you have to say, do I risk choosing to make myself vulnerable to this person, or is it not safe for me to be vulnerable here? Trust, though, is what really holds teams together. Well, it holds all relationships together. And the study from Fortune magazine showed that the best work environments are the ones built on trust. And that study she has on page 223. What people used to think is this is a soft skill, and so it's been ignored in the past as something that's very secondary in business. But it actually changes everything when trust is built correctly. And when I think about the leadership in Strength Finders book, the Leadership Strength Finders book that I use in my coaching practice, I love it because one of the exercises I have each participant do after they know what their top 5 strengths are is to write out their way of doing the 4 qualities as a leader. So it's the showing compassion, which is what Brené talks about, providing stability for those on your team, creating hope for those on your team, and the 4th thing is building trust. So no matter your personality, your gifts, your talents, your strengths, there is a way for you to build trust that is unique to you, that you don't have to take on somebody else's way of doing things. Brené and her team identified 7 behaviors that define trust. But I want to preempt those behaviors with a behavior of trust, of course, of how we trust God first. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 say, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek to do his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. So, first of all, we do that behavior, and that supports it first, right? The behavior of prayer and asking God about building trust. But let's look at the braving acronym that she talks about. Boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. That's our braving word, right? She calls this the Rumble tool because it is really a conversation guide that we can use to keep our conversations in that place of curiosity, asking questions, staying involved, leaning in, and ultimately trust building. So let's look at each one of these. Excuse me. Boundaries. Boundaries means we respect everyone, and when we're not clear about what is okay, we ask. We have to be willing to say no. Reliability is to do what you say you'll do, not overpromise, and know your limitations. Accountability means own your mistakes and apologize and make amends. Vault means that you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. Basically, it's about keeping confidences. Don't spill your stuff to another person. Because what will happen is they'll think you'll do the same about them. Integrity. Choose courage over comfort. Choose what is right over what is fun, fast, and easy. I think of, in my book, Clarified 12 Principles to Illuminate Your Calling to the Marketplace, this is the story of Puah and Shifra. And if you don't know who Puah and Shifra are in the Bible, 1, you can get my book. 2, you can see their story in Exodus 1 of how they stood up and chose courage over comfort. And then non-judgment. Ask for what you need. Talk about how you feel. Ask for help. In Brené's research, the number one thing that put marbles in the jar, helped build trust, was to ask for help. This is the best way for you to whoosh, you're building trust with people. Jesus told us not to judge in Matthew 7, 1 through 5. So when judgment shows up, Ask yourself, where is it coming from? Is it inside of me? Turn inward and ask God for help. The G in braving is generosity. So we're supposed to extend the most generous interpretation possible of the intentions, the words, and the actions of others. We're supposed to show mercy. James 2:13 says, there will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. But if you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you. Brené says her mantra has become, choose what is right over what is easy. That's what God wants us to do. And believers in Jesus, we should be doing the same thing. So how do we do this? We can do it by putting this braving into inventory into practice. The paragraph on the middle of page 231, going all the way to page 231, says, we encourage teams to work together to develop 1 or 2 observable behaviors for each of the 7 elements. These behaviors can be specific to your work style and your culture. They should reflect how your team wants to operationalize the specific element. And each behavior should be something that you're willing to do, to be held accountable for doing, and to hold others accountable for doing. Ladies, it needs to be personalized. And right in the next paragraph, she talks about a tool that you can download to actually do this for yourself and your organization. So I think it's amazing. Let's return to the marble story for a minute. Do you remember that it is in those small moments that we trust each other? We got a minute left for the 58. I hope you're going to stay with us for a few more minutes as I finish up. I'm almost done. You're going to stay with me? Give me some yeses. That would be awesome. I promise to be done by 1:05. Here we go. The marble story. Do you remember the marble story? Okay, so the marble story, it is in those small moments that we build trust. Oh, Maddie, I'm so glad you're here. Those small moments that we build trust with each other means like giving a hello in the morning, praising a progress of someone on a project, telling your team how a person helped you, just getting coffee for someone. Those types of things all put marbles in the trust jar. What are some other behaviors that you think put marbles in the jar? I'll tell you one thing that Mary's doing for me this week. She's coming to my house in a couple of days to help me choose some outfits for a show that I'm going to be on, a new show on YouTube. And that for me is putting marbles in my trust for her. So thank you, Mary. What are some other ways you can put in trust? Put in those marbles to help grow trust with people. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, so encourage each other and build each other up, just as you are doing already. So trust building is a living process that requires ongoing attention, right? God has already told us in his word. So I'm glad that Brené's research backs it up. The last section we're going to look at is applying that braving to our basics of self-trust, trusting ourselves. For this exercise, you will have to think about a tough situation where you experienced a setback or a disappointment. And on page 234 in the book, you think about this section and you get to ask yourself, how did I do? Boundaries. Did I respect my own boundaries? Reliability. Could I count on myself? Accountability. Did I hold myself accountable or blame others? Volt. Did I honor the volt and did I share or not share appropriately? Integrity. Did I choose courage over comfort? Non-judgment. Did I ask for the help I needed? Generosity. Was I even generous to myself? This is a great exercise on page 234 for you to think through. Did I give myself that in the last situation where it was hard? And how can I move forward in giving myself that leeway, that openness, allowing myself to do it? I'm going to end today with Psalm 15. It's only 5 verses, and it says this, and this is the NLT version. Who may worship in your sanctuary, Lord? Who may enter your presence on your holy hill? Those who leave blameless lives and do what is right, speaking the truth from sincere hearts. Those who refuse to gossip or harm their neighbors or speak evil of their friends. Those who despise flagrant sinners and honor the faithful followers of God and keep their promises even when it hurts. Those who lend money without charging interest and who cannot be bribed to lie about the innocent. Such people will stand firm forever. I think Psalm 15 summarizes exactly what Brené's been talking about here. If you've enjoyed this, I'd love for you to be a part of our conversation over on the Facebook page. We will expand on some of the issues that we've done here. If you're on the replay, please leave a comment down below. And remember, we are being respectful here of all of our views. And if you would like to reach out to me, I'll have that information in the show notes afterwards. Those of you who are still here, I thank you for being here with me a little bit over the hour. Do you have a question? Do you have a comment? Would you like to say something before we get off today if you're here? Thank you, Mary, Maddie, June. I don't know who else has been here, but I so appreciate this. We are going to be having one more time when we'll be getting together here live, which will be on August 13th. And we are still going to be in our Facebook group through the end of August. So if you haven't caught up to all of the reading, you still have a month to get all the reading done and have those conversations over on the Facebook page. I would love for you to be there. Thank you so much for being here. Any questions? Any comments? I just want to wait a second or two about that. Give us some more thumbs up, ladies. That always helps our algorithm. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your hour with us with this Dare to Lead by Brené Brown, Dare to Lead Bible book study that is really applying everything God has told us in his word and showing how Brené's research has made it even ultimately more true in our minds because it's absolutely what we need. I love that she gives us practical ways to apply what God is telling us to do. So I'm going to get ready to get off. So have a great rest of your day. And as always, be filled to overflowing.